What hits your mind when the phrase load management drops?
Around. It shouldn't be needed, first and foremost,
You heard that right? Michael Jordan just scorched the earth regarding the NBA's resting protocols. He didn't mince words about how soft the league looks now, disrespecting the ticket holders in the sport itself. Oh, and he dropped a bombshell about a certain King James habit. Believe me, this might shatter how you view the modern game. We are dissecting Jordan's steel trap mindset, unveiling a wild reality about LeBron, and looking at the hard numbers proving the league has gone soft. Strap in, it is going to get ugly. You know that old saying, they don't build them like that anymore. Jordan is the living proof. The man operated by a singular obsessive code. If a fan scraped together their weekly wage to watch him, he owed them a masterpiece. No days off. No nursing a sore muscle. No sitting on the bench. You paid for greatness, you got greatness.
The fans are there to watch me play. I want to impress that guy way up on top who probably worked his ass off to get a ticket.
That wasn't just talk. The man clocked a full 82 games in 9 separate seasons. 9. Even during his twilight, years with the Wizards playing on knees that had survived 15 years of combat, he laced them up every single night. Compare that to today's stars taking rest days in December. And keep in mind, this is the Warrior who battled through the flu in the '97 finals. He dropped 38 points in 44 minutes while barely keeping his balance. That goes beyond mental toughness. That is a borderline psychotic need to win. But that was his nature. Sprained. Ankles, migraines, back. Spasms, he played through the lot of it. In '93, after the tragedy with his father, he returned claiming the court was his sanctuary. That is how deeply his soul was tethered to the sport. What is crazy is how contagious that intensity became. Teammates claimed scrimmaging against Mike was hell compared to actual games. Steve Kerr took a fist to the face in '95 just because Jordan couldn't dial it back. He demanded his peers match his fire. That is why those Bulls squads were not just talented, they were forged in iron. But here is the nuance people miss. That obsession didn't just hang banners, it built the league. Before his airness, the NBA wasn't a global juggernaut. In the early 80s, finals games were barely televised live. Then Jordan arrives, refuses to rest, delivers a spectacle nightly, and suddenly basketball becomes the hottest ticket on earth. Ratings skyrocketed. Jersey sales tripled. Every kid wanted to be like Mike. Understand this, the NBA didn't conquer the world just through marketing. It happened because the face of the league established trust. You buy a ticket, you witness a legend. No caveats. That is the standard, he said. Jordan defined greatness as performing when it was inconvenient, painful, or seemingly impossible. That was the code. So naturally, his recent critique of load management landed with the force of a bomb. Because when a Titan who performed through sickness and grief claims you are disrespecting the patrons by sitting out, you cannot simply ignore it. And the kicker, he is not standing alone on this hill. When MJ fired that shot, the old guard didn't blink. Icons like Iverson, Barkley, and Magic nodded along, relieved that someone finally voiced the truth. It wasn't bitterness. It was the echo of a generation that lived by one statute: if you can walk, you play. Kobe Bryant was essentially Jordan's spiritual successor in this regard. The Mamba detested the concept of rest. In one of his final interviews, he scoffed at the very idea, asking what load management even meant. This is the Warrior who tore? His Achilles stood up, sank 2 free throws, and walked off under his own power. In 2019, when asked about resting, Kobe put it plainly.
The people that I've always had issues or problems with are the people that don't demand excellence for themselves. I won't tolerate that.
That is the killer instinct talking. He and Jordan shared that DNA, a genetic trait that seems to have skipped LeBron. Then you have Allen, Iverson pound for pound, the toughest gladiator to touch the hardwood. I treated every tip-off like a street brawl. Broken fingers, bruised ribs, twisted ankles, irrelevant. He told the New Heights podcast that the concept of voluntary resting was alien to his era. His logic was simple: if the legs work, we hoop.
You could never come to me and talk to me about load management like, AI, you're not playing tonight. Why? We're resting you. You're resting me like you're resting me. That's not load management. That's a suspension, man.
And he isn't blowing smoke. Back in 2001, the man battled through 10 separate injuries and still dragged the EDBSI Sixers all the way to the finals. Charles Barkley has been banging this drum for years and he doesn't pull any punches. Over on TNT, he laid it out. Plain modern players are coddled. They're ripping off the fans and it's a complete joke watching healthy guys warm the bench. Chuck's logic is undeniable. People shell out thousands of dollars to witness the world's elite. Hoop not to stare at expensive fashion statements on the sidelines. And let's be honest, he's right.
Stop this BS with load management. We can't keep crapping on the fans where we're like, wait, yeah, you're making $70 million and you can't play basketball 4 days a week?
That's Barkley's philosophy and it's ironclad. Even Magic Johnson stepped into the ring when the league started catching flack for this mess. He stated it clearly, this load management trend is bleeding the game dry.
They have got to do something about this load management. It's hurting the game.
Magic built the Showtime legacy. He knew the NBA is show business first, and if your headliners aren't performing, the theater goes dark. He noted that ratings plummeted nearly 40% recently, and the reason isn't hard to find. The stars simply aren't showing up. Compare that to the Iron Men legends like Karl Malone, Patrick Ewing, and Larry Bird. These guys treated an 80-game season like a warm-up. Malone clocked 80-plus games 17 times across 19 seasons. That is nearly 20 years of perfect attendance. Ewing was cut from the same cloth. Even with his knees grinding bone on bone, he was still lacing them up for the full 82. Then you have Bird. The man's back was destroyed herniated discs. So agonizing he had to lie prone on the locker room floor just to survive timeouts. He once admitted he couldn't bear letting down the folks who bought tickets. Picture that. The guy could barely stand straight most nights, yet he still dropped 30 points because he felt he owed it to the crowd. That is the divide between eras, right there. For them, playing was about respect. You don't call in sick when working class families plan their entire week around watching you work. So when Jordan calls out modern players, specifically guys like LeBron, who seem to endorse this culture of softness, understand he isn't just venting, he is sounding the alarm against the creeping mediocrity in the league. And if you think this is just old head nostalgia, look at the data. Back in the 80s and 90s, playing a full season wasn't a milestone, it was the standard. In 1980-56, guys played all 82 games. The following year, 57 did it. Throughout the 90s, the trend held. 58 players in 1990-50, in 91-53, in 92-51, and 98 and 58 in the year 2000. That means nearly 60 guys every single season, more than a full modern roster, were what we considered Iron Men. Fast forward to the load management era in 2016. That number plummeted to 18. Chatiamuyo, next year 17. In 2019, just 21. Then it bottomed out. 5 players in 2022. 5 out of hundreds. In 2023, there were 10. Last season, 17. And early projections for 2025 hover around 11, from nearly 60 a year down to barely a dozen. That isn't evolution. That is an insult to the legacy of the sport. And don't tell me the league suddenly got more brutal. These guys have private jets, personal nutritionists, sleep coaches, and recovery tech that belongs in a science fiction film, yet somehow they play less. The old guard didn't have fancy algorithms or recovery protocols. They had ice buckets and pride. They suited up because they believed the fans deserved their best. That is the code Jordan speaks of. The code that built the NBA's global reputation. We went from 60 guys a year hitting 82 games to throwing parades because someone cracked 70. That ain't progress. That is a siren. The numbers don't just tell a story, they expose a generation that has forgotten the value of showing up. And we all feel it. The league just doesn't hit the same anymore. Today's game is about comfort control and strategic napping. Players manage their minutes like hedge fund managers handle portfolios. It's all load data and longevity. Sure, that sounds smart in a boardroom, but when working folks drop hundreds on tickets to watch their heroes model designer sweats on the pine, it doesn't feel smart. It feels disrespectful. Let's be real, the modern NBA has turned the sport into corporate risk management. Guys skip games like it's company policy. Back in the day, players feared losing their roster spot. Now, they fear a little soreness. And you can't have this conversation without naming the ringleader LeBron James. His whole, if I'm hurt, I sit. If not, I play. Line from 2019 is rich coming from someone who claims the GOAT title. It symbolizes this entire generation's mindset. It isn't about playing through pain anymore. It's about brand protection. LeBron has missed over 100 games in the last 5 seasons. That is more absences in a few seasons than Jordan posted during his whole Chicago run, minus that one season with the broken foot. It hits different when you remember what Mike was actually doing. We're talking 40 minutes of combat every night, getting hammered by the bad boy Pistons, then lacing them up the very next evening like he had a vendetta. Now let's get to the brass tacks. You know the history. The flu game. Game 5, 1997 Finals. Mike was practically holding onto the walls, sweating buckets before the ball even went up. The medical staff said he was ghost white, dry as a bone, and finished. So what happens? He hangs 38 on the board, sinks the heartbreaker, and falls right into Scotty's grip. That wasn't just a stat line, it was a declaration. He clocked in when every fiber of his anatomy screamed quit, purely out of reverence for the craft. And look, let's not pretend LeBron is the only villain here. Kawhi Leonard practically architected the whole load management movement. Back in 2019 in Toronto, they spun it like some breakthrough in sports performance. The strategy benched the man for 22 contests, so he's peaking in the postseason. And sure, it paid off. They hoisted the trophy, and the rest of the league started taking memos. But that ring came with a cost. Franchises everywhere saw that schematic and figured, why burn fuel in January? Just like that, Kawhi became the patron saint of scheduled rest. Toronto's victory morphed a medical necessity into a league-wide culture. Recall when the media pressed him on the topic and he just gave that signature shrug. If I'm good, I'm good. Yeah, cue the tape.
Because I was injured during that whole year. But other than that, if I'm able to play, I'll play basketball.
Then you've got Kevin Durant. KD loves preaching about extending the window in body maintenance, but if we're keeping it 100, the OGS couldn't care less about biometrics. They were chasing immortality, not a tune-up. Karl Malone, Patrick Ewing, Larry Legend. These cats weren't running algorithms on career longevity. They were hunting glory every time the lights came on. Durant's mindset tracks if you're managing a portfolio, but from the bleachers, it murders the mystique. Every tip-off used to carry potential history. Now you're basically praying to the basketball gods that the superstar you paid to see actually suits up for a game you circled on the calendar months ago. Even Steph Curry, arguably the most magnetic player on the planet, has Pooja scribed to the rest when a convenient philosophy. He set out several primetime matchups last year for maintenance. The strangest detail isn't the rest, it's how routine it feels. Headliners clock 60 appearances, dodge the heavyweights, and still slide into the MVP debate like they battled through the trenches. Try selling that narrative in the 90s, you'd get laughed out of the building. And here's the wicked irony. All this downtime hasn't curbed the injury list. Organizations claim to be sharper, more data-driven, and more risk-averse. Yet icons are still dropping like flies. A study from 2024 showed that player availability actually tanked over the last 10 years despite all the breakthroughs in recovery tech. So if the system is broken, what exactly are we doing? Here, Jordan's era didn't have a lab coat army instructing them on how to inhale. They operated on pride. And that grit built the global empire these modern athletes are profiting from right now. The tragic reality is we might never reclaim that raw, unfiltered intensity. The era where the love for the game outweighed the PR strategy. The era where every single buzzer mattered.
I'm trying to make a name for myself. There's no way I can sit. I need to get out there and show what I'm capable of. I want to play. I want to win. I want to make an impact.
So yeah, we're looking at the softest epoch in NBA history. The skill set is elite, but the ticker isn't there. The appetite, the sense of duty, and the reverence for the struggle evaporated. Mike didn't just participate in the sport, he inhabited it like a sacred obligation. Nowadays, too many guys treat it like an elective. And this is where the plot thickens. Because when Jordan sounded off on load management, let's keep it real, he wasn't speaking in abstracts. That was a dart, a low key, but lethal injection. Everybody knows exactly whose mailbox that letter was for. LeBron James. You see, Mike doesn't throw accidental shade. He's too surgical. When he discusses guys taking nights off, losing the edge, and prioritizing comfort over the battle, that's not a general observation. That's him stating, don't you even think about claiming the crown if you're selecting recovery days over regulation play. And here's the kicker. Jordan always showed massive respect for Kobe Bryant, unconditionally, labeled Kobe his little brother, and admitted he was the only cat who matched his frequency. Jordan honored that killer instinct. Bryant was obsessive, manic, relentless. He didn't need to broadcast to the globe that he was cut from a different cloth. He demonstrated it nightly. Now, has his airness ever dropped praise like that for LeBron? Negative, zero, zip. Instead, we get that footage. Yeah, the one where Mike commented that LeBron moved awkwardly.
LeBron always moves strange, not like Kobe. And when the Diddy stuff came out, I knew I was right all along. That's why I chose to mentor Kobe, not him.
Jordan didn't just stumble over those words, he aimed them. It was a precise strike, implying that James simply lacks that vintage wiring. You see, the so-called magnificence of LeBron has always carried a scent of strategy. He manages his public persona like a Fortune 500 CEO. He preaches about sustainability, high IQ basketball, and asset protection. It feels boardroom sanitized, and that is the crux of the issue. MJ isn't denying the talent. He's suggesting that LeBron's specific brand of excellence would have crumbled in the era that forged the legends. James plays to sustain. Jordan played to conquer. Kobe grasped that distinction. That is precisely why Mike viewed him as an equal, not just an heir. Which circles us back to this epidemic of scheduled rest. You realize the situation is dire when the association has to literally mandate that its employees perform their jobs. That is the current reality. The front office finally hit a breaking point, releasing a participation mandate that effectively says if you can walk, you play. The era of arbitrary nights off is done. By 2023, the league instituted about hard rule marquee names must suit up for every nationally televised broadcast and in-season tournament battle, unless there is a verified medical excuse. Furthermore, franchises are barred from benching multiple stars in a single evening. Then you have the 65-game threshold. You want to be in the conversation for MVP, All-NBA, or Defensive Player of the Year. Fine, get on the hardwood. You have to clock in for 65 games to even be eligible. That is the new law. It demonstrates just how exhausted the fan base and the executives have become. It is absurd when you step back and look at it. Rewind to 2012. Greg Popovich took a $250,000 hit just for sitting his big guns against Miami on national television. That was the warning shot. Today, it is total warfare. And frankly, it is pathetic that the NBA had to resort to this. No one needed a handbook to tell Jordan to lace them up. Same goes for Kobe. But now we have to dangle trophies just to get the best talent on the floor. That isn't load management. That is coddling. Then come the justifications that organizations and athletes toss around. They claim it is science or analytics. Franchises love to weaponize buzzwords like heart rate variability, recovery protocols, and workload metrics like they are engineering a shuttle launch, as if taking 20 games off is some sort of genius, tactical maneuver. They brand it as preserving longevity or optimizing output. It sounds intelligent, doesn't it? But here is the catch. It is smoke and mirrors. The NBA actually crunched 10 years of numbers and discovered zero correlation between sitting players and preventing injuries. The report was blunt. Results do not suggest that missing games for rest or load management reduces future in-season injury risk. Simply put, the science is a lie, and the i.e. ugliest part. When the icons sit, the ticket holders are the ones footing the bill, and the resentment is compounding. Look at Kawhi Leonard's 2019 run with the Raptors. The man skipped 22 regular season contests in the name of preservation. Sure, he was fresh for the postseason, and yes, it resulted in a ring. But here's the kicker. It established a toxic blueprint that the rest of the league immediately adopted. Sitting out became a valid tactic, and overnight it wasn't about injury prevention anymore. It was about manipulating the spreadsheet. Then you have the plight of the real-time spectator. The fan who saved up, cleared their schedule, and showed up only to see their hero in street clothes. In 2022, Curry missed a massive showdown against the Bucks. In 2023, LeBron's absence from primetime slots ignited the same fury. It isn't limited to the box score. This trend warps history. Award races, MVP arguments, playoff positioning, and legacy reels now carry an asterisk. Which contest did the superstar actually bother to play every choice to sit? Adds another layer of doubt, erodes the unpredictability, and chips away at the electricity that turned the NBA into a global powerhouse. Listen, this is about more than stats. This is the soul of the sport. Basketball isn't just entertainment. It reflects the ethos of its time. Back in the day, the grind was the point. Michael Jordan didn't play just because he was talented, he played because presence was mandatory. Legends like Kobe Bryant and Malone viewed pain as a job requirement. The crowd demanded it, and in return they got drama, grit, and uncertainty every single night. Now the script is flipped. Stars ration their minutes, dodge heavy competition, and the audience feels the disconnect. The thrill is being suffocated by safety and calculation. When Jordan slammed load management, it wasn't just an old man yelling at clouds. It was a wake-up call, a direct challenge to the players in the league office. This is not what the game is supposed to be. The vintage toughness, the exhaustion, the suffering, that was the magic. If athletes continue prioritizing comfort over conquest, we risk losing the heartbeat of the game entirely. That is what makes this era so jarring and the fix so critical. So I will leave you with this. Are we content watching the soft era define professional basketball, or do we demand that old school hunger return? Let me know your stance in the comments. Who in the league today actually competes? Like it is a debt unpaid. Press, like if you are finished with the alibis and PHU just scribe for the commentary that holds the league's feet to the fire and speaks the unvarnished truth.